Models, all right, these two, well, the operator artery we do, the middle rectal artery we don't. And then following the pudendal nerve, we have the internal pudendal artery. And it's going to go to the muscles, the bulbospongiosus muscles and so on. But most importantly, it is going to become, after it passes into the perineal area, it is going to become the inferior rectal artery. So here is the descending colon, sigmoid colon, and rectum. Rectum means straight. So it's the straight part, all right? Superior rectal artery comes down and supplies the top of the rectum. There's only one of those. Middle rectal artery in the pelvis is going to come in and supply the middle of the rectum. And then down near the anal canal, coming off of the internal pudendal, we're going to have the inferior rectal. So superior rectal, middle rectal, and inferior rectal. We'll visit this again on Thursday because the middle and inferior rectal veins can become hemorrhoids. And an internal and external hemorrhoid depends on whether it's middle or inferior rectal veins. Okay. So top of the rectum is off of the aorta via the inferior mesenteric artery and superior rectal. Middle rectal is directly off of the internal iliac. Inferior rectal is directly off of the internal pudendal. So if you have netters, go to the pelvis or the Themes Atlas, go to the pelvis region, and there's a really good view of this sequence.
How do you know when it gets to the inferior rectal artery?
Do you remember the model? Let me just take a second here. I've got a few minutes left. I want to do the lower limb. But let me pull up a model that we used in the reproductive, I'll pull up our reproductive lab, one of our lab exams. Well, forget it. I can't pull the screen out, so never mind. We'll deal with that. But I'll remember the bottom, the view where the person was lying on their bottom? Mm-hmm. You can see the pudendal nerve coming in and going up to the transverse perineal muscle and so on. You'll see the nerve going, that yellow nerve going into the, so we had this view, and we had the vagina and penis and rectum, vagina and penis, vagina and urethra and anus. And we had our nerve coming along from the here and then going up to supply that. Branches will come here to the anus. So the internal pudendal artery is coming along with the pudendal nerve, and branches will come across that gap there directly to the anus, and that's the inferior rectum. Okay? All right. So now let's look at the external iliac. All right? This is similar to our upper limb, in that it's named for the bones and nerves and structures that we found in that region. So we have common iliac, giving off internal iliac and forming external iliac. And now our barrier that changes it to femoral is the inguinal ligament that passes across the pelvis from ilium to pecten, the pubic bone. As soon as it comes out from underneath that and it comes into the anterior thigh, it is the femoral artery. Well, femur, femoral artery. It disappears into the adductor magnus muscle. Remember the big muscle that's medial and posterior that does adduction? When it comes back out the backside, all right, we can see it again behind the knee. So I'm going to indicate this with a dotted line, and I'm going to put my knee up high so you guys can see it. Once it comes out the back side of the knee, it's called the popliteal knee. Popliteal fossa is that depression behind the knee. So this is called the popliteal or popliteal artery. And if you cross your one leg over the other, you can see your foot bounce in rhythm again to the expansion of the popliteal artery. All right? Now, it divides. The popliteal artery ends about 2 inches below the knee by giving off a branch that comes around to the front of the leg and onto the top of the foot. What was a major muscle on the front of the leg that did dorsiflexion? Anterior tibialis. All right, so this blood vessel passes between the tibia and the fibula to run down behind the anterior tibialis on that membrane between the tibia and the fibula. And this is known as the anterior tibial artery. It passes onto the top of the foot, and we say the top of the foot is what relationship to the bottom of the foot?
Dorsal.
Dorsal. So this vessel is known as the dorsalis pedis. So it runs across the top of the foot towards the toes. The popliteal, as soon as the anterior tibia is given off, continues straight down, but we give it a different name. And this is the posterior tibial. So if you take off the gastrocnemius and soleus, you can see this blood vessel running down the middle of the back of the leg on top of flexor hallucis longus and tibialis posterior. Dotted line because it's on the back of the leg. So this is posterior tibial artery. And it gives off a lateral branch. What do we call the muscles in the lateral aspect of the leg that function to prevent over pronation? No, under pronation, fibularis, brevis, and longus. So this vessel is called the fibular artery, or if you use the older term, peroneal artery. It just goes to the ankle. It doesn't go under the foot. All right? So now so you can see better, I'm going to finish off. Here's our posterior tibial artery. Here's the fibular artery going lateral. Here's our anterior tibial artery coming onto the top of the foot. But now we need to supply the bottom of the foot. Posterior tibial artery follows the nerves around the medial malleolus. Remember the tendons of posterior tibialis and flexor hallucis longus went behind the medial malleolus? The nerve does too. It follows all of those and ends up on the bottom of the foot. One major vessel runs along the inside of the bottom of the foot to the big toe, and the other one passes laterally to get to the little toe. So if the top of the foot is the dorsal surface, what do we call the bottom of the foot? Ventral or, this was ventral or palmar. The bottom of the foot is ventral or plantar. So these vessels are known as the medial plantar, and it's on the big toe side, or lateral plantar. So if I wanted to trace a drop of blood from the heart to the bottom of the foot on the little toe side, I would go ascending aorta to the arch of the aorta, thoracic, abdominal. The abdominal would end by forming common iliac, and then I would take external iliac. External iliac would become femoral. Same vessel, just a different place, so we call it a different name. And then I'd be in the popliteal. Now I want to go on the bottom of the foot, so instead of taking anterior tibial, I'd just stay where I was, and that would become posterior tibial. And I want to go to the little toe side, which is lateral, so I would take lateral plantar. Okay. This is where it helps drawing on yourself, because then you can use your finger or Or even if you don't draw, you can use your finger to go, okay, I'm coming across the axil, the subclavian, to the axillary, to the brachial, and then to the ulnar. Okay? Drawing helps because then you can visualize it after you've actually created the sensation of the pen on your skin. Okay, we're done. Just in time for the weekends before I can give you a little more stuff. Again, remember these terms. Many of them apply to the organs, so that will help you with their destination, or they apply to the region of the extremity. So after 4:30, you might have to find that file again in your brain, but it should be there. Utilize that information that you already know. Nail down the vessels so you can draw the line drawings before you try to do tracing.
Say that again?
Be able to do a line drawing, your ascending aorta, arch of the aorta, thoracic aorta, abdominal aorta, common iliac, external iliac. And you can do that before you go to, okay, now I'm going to try to do Dr. Blood. That would just be confusing if you don't know the vessels yet.
So you said